Sergej, it's great to see you today.
Oh, thank you for having invited me today.
You're the director of a major think tank in Berlin, the European Resilience Initiative Center, and you've obviously been following very closely this past week and a half what's been happening in Russia. What do you make of it? What's really going on? What deals did Putin make with Prigozhin?
Well, there is a lot of ifs in this situation, and there are only few facts we know for sure. What we know for sure that there was a mutiny. We know for sure that the Wagner troops moved almost without any resistance from Rostov to Voronezh. They took over like two major Russian regions, including the city of Rostov, which is the headquarters of the Russian Southern Military District. And then they suddenly stopped and dissolved. And this is what we know. And then a lot of ifs appear. We don't know if the deal was signed and who signed the deal, and if and what was the content of this deal. I'm not sure that Prigozhin signed this deal with Vladimir Putin, because for Vladimir Putin, signing a deal with Prigozhin was clearly accepting someone as his opponent who is definitely lower in the ranks. Remember that Putin denied any chance to rejected any chance to meet Volodymyr Zelensky, who is a legitimate president of a sovereign country. And now Vladimir Putin should sign a deal and have negotiations with his former cook, who was totally financially and organizatorily dependent on Vladimir Putin. I don't buy it. We don't know also if the Wagner troops were transferred to Belarus. There should have been like 25,000 of Wagner troops. The camp which they have constructed in Belarus has only capacity for about 8,000, where are the other 12 or more thousand? We don't know it. We don't know where is Prigozhin. He wants us to believe that he's traveling around Russia or Belarus, but we know that he deliberately had a program of having his doubles, and these doubles are real, in contrary to the alleged doubles of Vladimir Putin. And he used his doubles to send them to the European countries to demonstrate that allegedly the EU lets him in, like to undermine the credibility of the European sanctions. Is it Prigozhin who is traveling around, or is his doubles? We don't know. So there are a lot of ifs. We don't know where he goes further. There is nothing for him to do in Belarus. We don't know if there was a deal. We don't know who signed this deal, with whom signed this deal. That are all the questions, and this is only the speculation.
So do you think within Moscow, how does the average Russian interpret what's going on? Were they supportive of Prigozhin? Are they fearful of what's going to happen? Or are they rallying behind Putin at this point?
Well, we have seen clear rallies for Prigozhin in all major cities. We have not seen any rally for Putin, and that should be a big warning sign for Vladimir Putin. But it also demonstrates that people in Russia are ready and willing to accept something who is much more brutal, more cruel than Vladimir Putin. Russians tell us all the time they do not demonstrate against the war because they fear of some consequences. They can be arrested, they can be sent to jail, which is true. They can be arrested, they can be sent into the jail. But now we saw hundreds, if not thousands, of Russians demonstrating for a militant mutiny against the Kremlin regime, and suddenly it's okay for them. We know that even now, after Prigozhin's mutiny was called mutiny, and Prigozhin was called on the state media as an enemy of the state, students in Moscow celebrate their prom, waving Prigozhin's Wagner flags and chanting Wagner chants. Obviously, it's okay for them. And that is a very cruel moment, a very crucial moment. That means that the Russians are ready to celebrate a terrorist group which is famous for killing their prisoners of war, smashing their heads with sledgehammers, castrating prisoners of war, and making advertising for their recruits, promising them to live a lawless life of terror, raping women, killing people, torturing them, and do everything what only the most weird sadists are dreaming to do. And this is the group which is being celebrated by the Russians, normal Russians who go to bars, who go to streets, who go to parks, normal civilians. And that is really terrifying, because this demonstrates that there is a huge demand for such a person like Prigozhin, and for such a brutal organization as Wagner. And this means that even if Prigozhin will be killed or disappears or will be bought, the place of Prigozhin is vacant. And every oligarch, every Kremlin player, every minister can inflate a similar person to the level of Prigozhin and use this person as a camouflage for the next attempt of a mutiny. We know that 1 year ago, Prigozhin was a known person in Russia from the media point of view. Nobody knew him. Prigozhin sued journalists who tried to connect him with Wagner. He denied any connection to Wagner. And the first recordings where he said, yes, I found Wagner, they appeared in summer last year. So in less than 1 year, he was inflated into a person who challenges Vladimir Putin himself. So even if he disappears, another person can be inflated maybe even sooner than Prigozhin was, because the scheme is clear and the market is clear, and there is a huge demand for the new Prigozhin.
But now that all this has happened, what do you see happening next? What's going to happen? What can we expect to see in the coming days, weeks, or months in Russia?
Well, of course, for the Ukrainian army, it's a good news because the Russians have lost at least a couple of dozens of thousands of troops, and the Russian army doesn't know who they should trust or who they may not trust. It is a huge negative impact for the morale of the Russian troops. But for Russia, it demonstrates that there is no strong power in Russia. The experience of Prigozhin will motivate a lot of people who were dreaming about such a march on Moscow, such a mutiny or separatism, to try their luck. And like any regional leader who has control over his police or like a couple of army units can try to do the same in a hope that as long as he doesn't attack Moscow itself, he will be let to keep what he controls, like Prigozhin was tolerated until he controlled only Rostov. And this is a huge temptation for everyone who wants to get out of the control of Moscow. And this means that for Russia, the times are coming which will be interesting. But another moment is what I already said, which is terrifying, is that there is a huge demand in the Russian society for brutality. Just imagine Vladimir Putin played all these years the most brutal, the most strong, the most decisive and toxic masculine person. But now it looks that Vladimir Putin is not the most brutal person in Russia, and the Russians want a person who is more brutal than Vladimir Putin. And this opens the gate to all possible strange creatures, which can be even more terrible than Prigozhin.
Sergej, that's a fascinating analysis. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for your invitation.